Hello everyone, I'm here today to do another video about my Read Around the World project that I have been doing throughout this year, so I will link the videos down below. But this time we're going to jump into Europe, and we are going to start by Western Europe. So this video I'm just going to talk about Portugal, Spain, France and Andorra, because I have read quite a lot of books from several of these countries, so I think it's going to take a little bit longer than if I would just have read one or two books. So first, from Portugal, the main person I have read from is Jose Saramago. He's a Nobel Prize winner. He's a very well-known author, and his writing is very dense, and it's kind of difficult to get through his books sometimes, but he's also very poignant, I think, and he makes very smart comments about society and things like that. So that's what I like about him mostly. I don't know the names in English because I have read these books in Spanish, because obviously Portuguese and Spanish are a lot closer together, so it just makes sense to read them in the language that it's closer to them that they can speak, because then there's less likelihood of translations going wrong, let's say. But yeah, one of the books that I read from him that I think is less known, but I think it's the first book that I read, and it made an impact on me, is The Cave, I think, or The Cavern, something like that, the translation. It's about this man that is an artisan. He makes clay products, and he lives in this town where there is sort of this company, this shopping mall that is taking over. So the shopping mall also made housing on top of it, so that the employees can live next to the shopping mall, and like they shop there, they work there, they live there, and they kind of never go out. And the daughter of this man works in the shopping mall, so they move there, and he tries to sell these figures that he does in the shopping mall, but they don't really like them because they are very artisanal, so they are never exactly the same, stuff like that. And we can see sort of like this man realizing about how capitalism kind of makes you live in this bubble where you don't really see what the important things are, and that relates also to the cavern in Plato, the myth of the cavern in Plato. And when I was reading it, I was in high school, and we were studying the cavern myth in Plato in philosophy, so it just connected very well with what I was reading. I really enjoyed it. Of course, it was difficult to go through because of the writing style, but I think his books are definitely worth it. But apart from that, I haven't read much else from Portugal, and I was talking with a Portuguese friend of mine, and she was saying, actually, there is not that many books from Portugal that get translated for some reason. I don't know why that is, but it's true that there are not that many books that are translated from Portuguese, and that's a pity, because I'm sure there are many, many, many good writers from there, but we just don't know about them because they don't get translated. So yeah, that's a pity. Then the next one, the next country that I wanted to talk to is Spain, and of course I am from Spain, so I have read a lot of books from Spain throughout my life. I mean, until I was like 14, 15, I only read books in Spanish, and many of them were from authors from Spain. So yeah, I have read a lot of Spanish books, and I have actually a video recommending some Spanish books, so if you are interested in that, you can check that out. I will put a link somewhere so that you can check it out if you want. But yeah, I think some of the books that I will recommend, Patria by Fernando Aranburu, or I think it's called fatherland, homeland, something like that in English, and it's about the Basque Country, the conflicts that they had in the 80s with the terrorist group ETA, and they look into a small village in the Basque Country, and two families. One of them, one of the sons is involved in the terrorist attacks, and the others are very against these terrorist groups. So that balance and that conflict. And actually, my mom recommended this one, and my mom grew up in the Basque Country at that time, so she said that it was very reminiscent of what she lived through. Obviously, she lived in the city, so it was less prominent, but still, it's kind of what she lived through when she was little. So, I really liked it. I think it's worth a try. Then, if you like a little bit more of an adventure, historical fiction kind of thing, I think Capitan Alatriste by Arturo Perez Reverte is a good place to go as well. This is basically the stories of this guy in the, I think it was 1600s, 1600s. He's kind of like a knight, and he gets into trouble. So it's a series of books, and in each book he gets in a different trouble and tries to solve it, kind of like an adventure story, and they are fun. They are a lot of fun. So if you're looking for something a little bit lighter but still interesting, I think that one is also a good place to go. And then another author that I also really like is Rosa Montero. She writes a variety of topics. I think my favorite is something called like The Crazy Idea of Never See You Again, or something like that, and it's about actually Marie Curie, and she looks a bit more into like how it would be to live that life, not just like the scientific crazy things, but what it was to be a woman in science, and how as supportive as Pierre Curie was of her science, she still had to do all the housework and all the domestic stuff when she came home. He was not that advanced. And there are things like that we don't normally consider when we talk about Marie Curie and how hard it was for her. It's not just that she had to make a place for herself among all the men. It's also the fact that she had a lot more responsibilities, because she was expected to perform all these tasks that were associated with women at the time. And I think that was really interesting when I read it. But she has other books. She often has this mix of fiction and non-fiction kind of thing. So she also has a book about imagination and what it does around our lives, and she has that with characters, but also it does feel a little bit like essays sometimes. So she has that kind of writing style, which it works for me. I know it doesn't work for everybody, but it does work for me. And then the last one that I wanted to talk about, because I read it this year and I think it's one of my favorite books of this year, is An Apartment on Uranus by Paul Preciado. Paul Preciado is a transgender person, and he in this book basically it's a collection of newspaper articles that he wrote throughout, I think, a year or two, and he talks a lot about that experience of the transition of his transgender identity, and also he talks about how it was perceived to his family and his society, because he is from a relatively conservative town in Spain, but he also has lived in many places, and that's another topic of these essays or newspaper articles. The thing that he lives in Barcelona, in Paris, and in Athens, and he has very deep connections to all these three places. And what it is to be in a place where you feel like you belong to, but you are not originally from, and have more than one place like that. I think that all of these essays, they are very short. It's like a newspaper column, so it's 1 or 2 pages, and they're very, very poignant, and they give a very good idea of all of the things that are important to this person and the journey that he went through, and the thoughts that he had along the way. And I really enjoyed it. I think it's brilliant. It's also a Fitzcarraldo, so if you like Fitzcarraldo editions, this is something that you can do to support them. And yeah, I think it's brilliant. So I hope any of you are interested can read it. Then for Andorra, it was difficult. It was difficult to find something that I could read from Andorra. So the main person that I found was Albert Salvado. It seems to be one of the main writers from Andorra, and he writes sort of these adventures, historical fiction. So he has a book about the pyramids in Egypt, which it wouldn't have fit in this very well. And then he also has a series about Jaume I, which was the king of that area at some point, I think in the Middle Ages or something like that. So he was reigning over, I think, Catalonia, Andorra, and some part of France. And I wanted to read that, but I couldn't find it easily, so I ended up reading Secrets of the Seven Smallest States of Europe by Thomas Eccardt, which is a non-fiction. It's written by a person from the US, so it's not an Andorran person, and it gives a lot of information about several countries. So I am actually using this book for several countries throughout Europe. It covers Andorra, Malta, Luxembourg, Liechtenstein, Monaco, Vatican City, and San Marino. And yeah, basically, at the beginning, it's mostly divided in 2 parts. In the first part, he talks about the commonalities of all these states and what things are common to all of them, what things are different. And then in the second part, it goes in detail to the history and the demographics of each state. And I think it was interesting. I learned things that I didn't know about, of how these places were formed, and some interesting other facts. I have to say that it was very clear to me that the author was from the US, because he said some things at some points that were very dismissive of European culture, and it was very dismissive of certain things that are natural to me. So for me, it was a bit jarring at points. Not big things, but he did say several times how none of these countries, except from Malta, really do have their own language, which is wrong. True that Andorra has Catalan, which is not exclusively from Andorra, but Catalan is definitely a different language. Luxembourgish is definitely a different language. It's not a dialect like he often says. And I think that that's a big difference between people from the US and people from Europe. Like, we do respect the languages of people, even if they are very close to each other. We are more prone to recognize a language as a language than just say it's a dialect, which I think for the people in the US, because the US is so huge and it has one language, they don't quite understand why languages will change every 15-20 minutes when you're driving through, but that's how we see it, and I think that this book didn't do justice to things like that. But yeah, overall, I learned a lot from all these countries, including Andorra, of course. And yeah, I mean, Andorra is one of the countries that I learned the least about, just because the culture of Spain is similar to the culture in Andorra, and also because I have been in Andorra several times. So yeah, I knew more about it than other of these countries, but still glad that I read it, and I'm still willing to read the Albert Salvado book if I ever get my hands onto it. And then the final country that I want to talk about in this video is France. And again, I have read quite a few books from France throughout the years, some in Spanish, some in English, some in French. And so I want to talk a little bit about some of the ones that I have read. The first one I think everyone knows, but it's one of those heartwarming classics for me, is The Little Prince by Antoine Saint-Exupery. I loved this one as a kid, and it still holds a very warm place in my heart. Also, my mom also loves it, so we have that connection, and that's extra special just because it's special for both of us. Another book that I have highlighted in this channel before, but I wanted to highlight again, is Disoriental by Djavadi. And Djavadi is an Iranian-French author, and this book is about kind of that journey to go to France and what it is to not be from anywhere really, because you left your country when you were young, so you were not from there anymore, but also how accepted you are in the new country. It just goes to a certain extent and not farther. There's also a lot of talk about gender and gender politics, and she also travels around Europe a little bit, and we see, yeah, that's Europe. We see Europe from the eyes of someone that was not born here, and also the tensions in Iran and how they affect the people also living here, all kinds of things like that. And I loved it, and I think it's brilliant, and everyone should read it, I think. And another author that I wanted to highlight from France was Laurent, and I have read HhHH from him, which is sort of like a essay, narrative non-fiction essay about I don't remember the name, Helmut something, one of the big persons in the Nazi regime, and how he was assassinated. And the thing that I like about this book is how conversational it is, and the way it's written is really smart. So the author kind of tells us that he is very interested in this particular event when he was, I think it was an attempt assassination, I don't know if they succeeded, but in Prague, when he was visiting Prague, someone tried to kill him, and he becomes really interested in that, and we follow his journey investigating this event. So we learn a lot about this person from the Nazi regime, but we also kind of get his research process, and I think that's very smart and very interesting. A very new way to present something like a non-fiction book. So I really like that. And he has another book about what it would be like if we never conquered the Americas or something like that. And I really, really want to read that too. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that at some point. But I think I have only read one book from him, but I really like his style and his innovation, so I'm looking forward to anything else from him. So yeah, those are all the books that I wanted to talk about in this video. Let me know if you have read any of them. If you have any more recommendations from any of these countries, I would love to know, especially from Portugal. And until next video, bye!